Hi, welcome to the Digital Pathology Place. I'm Alexandra Żuraw, and if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. This video is a recording of my Digital Pathology podcast with Donald O'Shea. Donald O'Shea is a serial entrepreneur in the field of digital pathology, and he's also the founder and CEO of Deciphex. So have a listen, and I hope you enjoy. Hi, Donald. How are you today?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me and for your time for the interview. Let us start.
Nice to be here.
I'm happy. Let us start with your background, and later tell us a little bit about Deciphex.
Okay, so my background, I'm an academic by trade, life sciences degree and PhD. Ended up teaching in a university for several years, but during that time I'd founded a number of startups, and one of those startups was a company called SlidePath, which was in the digital pathology space, and we founded that in 2003, I suppose, where almost digital pathology didn't really exist. I think we used to call it virtual pathology back then, if I recall. You know? So
that's like the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think we've had an interest in, I suppose back in the day, it was all about stitching images together, creating wide fields of view so you could appreciate, features more effectively, and so on and so forth. So I think as that company developed and evolved over the years, we ended up selling that company to a UK PLC called Genetics, and I joined the management team of Genetics, and we sold Genetics to Danaher, and we integrated that business as part of Microsystems initially, and then ultimately Biosystems. And as part of that journey, we're also involved in the acquisition of Aperio Technologies by Biosystems and its integration, and just the whole general digital pathology landscape, I suppose, over the last 20 odd years or so, you know.
So you're a pioneer in digital pathology, and you're a serial entrepreneur in this area, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's kind of it's been a passion of mine since the early 2000s, and you know, it's good to see that I'm still in the industry all these years later.
So, how did you form Deciphex?
Yeah, so
and
I
why?
think
because you had different ones before.
Yeah, and you know, it says, I suppose some people say lightning doesn't strike twice, and in the sense that you've had success, that you should probably leave it alone and not try again. But certainly, no, we decided to form Deciphex, I suppose, we were looking at opportunities around 2016, 2017, and I think the purpose of, or the ultimate kind of position where we ended up with Deciphex was very much around how do we leverage this kind of growing trend around artificial intelligence to automate specific processes in histopathology, but also kind of combine that with our workflow experience, because as I said, for many years we were a workflow company in various guises. So I think that we took a step back and said, look, okay, you know, there's a lot of engine companies out there, so to speak, who are looking at trying to develop AI engines for specific endpoints and so on and so forth. But how do we truly use AI to augment workflow and to actually accelerate workflow within the daily lives of pathologists who are using digital as a basis for their work? You know, so I think that's really the kind of the heart of the narrative anyway, in terms of where we were coming from with respect to Deciphex. And I think after that, then it became more a context of where do we apply the technology, what segments of the market do we work with, and so on and so forth. And, you know, we had a legacy interest in non-clinical pathology. We had some good collaborations in that space, and we were fortunate enough to be able to reactivate some of those collaborations in the early stages and work on, I suppose, a better workflow, a better solution for the non-clinical pathology market.
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to talk about it later, but I think this is one of very important differentiators of Deciphex from other companies that focus more on clinical pathology.
Correct. And, you know, I think that, you know, non-clinical pathology may seem like a relatively niche subject area, but, you know, I think while it may appear niche to the market, it's still a very, very high volume industry in terms of content, in terms of the amount of materials that are being reviewed, And it also has kind of unusual complexities in the sense that you have pathologists collaborating between, let's say, clinical research organizations on one side and pharma companies on another side. So you've got these inter-organizational collaborations that are quite complex to manage and administer in the context of using digital, right? You've also got an interesting regulatory landscape. We're talking about GLP versus FDA effectively as, in terms of FDA 510Ks. And I think also, a growing supply-demand dynamic in the industry where it's becoming harder and harder to recruit non-clinical pathologists. So I think in many ways, there's a number of factors that kind of fed into our thinking and decision-making around that.
I think very important things that you say, niche area, but high volume, because 90% of the drugs that are being developed never makes it to the market. So you never hear it about them on the clinical side, but all of them have to be evaluated for safety, for example, by pathologists, by veterinary pathologists.
Absolutely. And this key use case, we see this as a sustained need in the industry, for many, many years to come. And I think really it's more about how do we improve the efficiency of that process to get faster turnaround times in drug development as well, which is kind of key to all stakeholders in the industry.
So you're the CEO of Deciphex, and where are you located?
So Deciphex as a company is located in Ireland, and there's actually been quite a strong track record of digital pathology companies in Ireland. Bizarrely, it's not a place you would anticipate would have a strong track record in digital pathology, and but Deciphex as a company realistically is quite global in focus. We have a number of employees in the UK, we have employees in the US. We have employees in France and in Italy also. So and also in the Czech Republic as well.
Oh, really?
So effectively, as a company, we're very, very well spread out, quite diversified, and I suppose in these current times, it kind of helps us a little bit because of our distributed and remote nature, that we can kind of continue to work as effectively as we have under the pandemic situation.
So you basically offer your products globally.
Yes, and I think, look, in the end of the day, I suppose if you are operating in the non-clinical pathology space, it's a globally distributed industry. You know what I mean? The clinical research organizations in the industry are distributed globally. Pharma companies in the industry are distributed globally, and have programs of work going on in all continents, really. So in many ways, it's critical to be able to kind of provide service in a globalized fashion, but also to be able to provide infrastructure and technology that facilitates global interaction between different coordinating sites. And I think this is key again to what we do as a company, that we do this secure connectivity between various sites within pharma, or also between clinical research organizations and pharma companies as well, which I think is also a critical need.
You said your first company was founded in 2003. When did you start Deciphex?
Yeah, so we started Deciphex in 2017, but really, I think more conceptually than operationally, if that makes sense. So I think as a business, we really got moving in 2018, and we've scaled the business quite efficiently since then, and we're engaged with several of the top 10 global pharma, and significant CROs in the marketplace as well.
And how did you start? How did you start the company? What's the story behind leaving the workflow and moving into this kind of more hands-on pathology applications for the users?
Yeah, I think when we started the business, I suppose, like everything, it's about a critical mass of people, and it's about having the right talent that you can call on from various different domains and industries that you can leverage. And I suppose the other key point is having industry collaborators established as well. So I think there's a number of factors that kind of have to fall into place when starting an organization. And we were fortunate that I was able to I suppose leverage a lot of talent that I knew in the industry, obviously through my many years of working in the industry through various different companies, and also being able to work with key industry collaborators, like for example early collaborations we had with Janssen and AstraZeneca, and with some clinical pathologists in the US as well that we have a close working relationship with. I think that was really, really critical to helping us really zone in on the problem statement and getting that really, really crisp and sharp, so we develop the best possible product for the use cases we're working in.
So what is your mission at Deciphex, and why is this mission important?
Well, I think our mission really at this point, our primary focus is to facilitate, the complete digitization of non-clinical pathology, which I think is quite an ambitious one. You know what I mean? As I said,
but very necessary.
Yeah, so you've anywhere between probably 5 to 10 million slides a year being produced in the industry in various different locations, maybe even more, to be honest. You know what I mean? And trying to coordinate, manage, and that's on an annual basis, and with retention requirements and obligations. I think the ability to scale and manage infrastructure over many years to facilitate regulatory retention and other factors. You know what I mean? You have a huge problem on your hands. You're generating petabytes of data over a decade. You know what I mean? As an industry. So I think that while we're doing a lot on the infrastructural side and the content management and distribution side, I think it's also, the onus is also on the companies providing digitization equipment to drive high automation solutions to deal with those type of throughputs, and to also deliver a high quality of substrate or digital slide that one can actually rely on ultimately to make a diagnosis. So I think it's an industry-wide effort, but we see ourselves as being kind of a key facilitator in that. And I also believe the second part of that mission really is to accelerate the review. And I think digitization will only come on the basis that people feel like they're going faster, they're moving through their work more efficiently, and so on and so forth. So while digital in its own right, if correctly presented to the user, can lead to efficiency gains, I think the augmentation of that workflow with artificial intelligence and predictive analytics, I think that brings it to another level again of productivity. So that's where a lot of our effort and time and energy is going right now, is into the whole area of abnormality detection in non-clinical studies, and trying to efficiently and effectively identify kind of in pipeline effectively these abnormalities, so that they're presented to the reviewing pathologist in real time. You know what I mean? So they're not running analysis. The analysis is done. It's available. It's there. It's something that they can consume immediately. So I think the combination of an efficient workflow plus AI augmentation, I think together will drive the efficiencies needed to transform the industry from the microscope to digital.
Yeah, keyword efficiency. I don't know if that's your experience as well. Whenever I talk to my pathologist colleagues, this is the first objection: it's too slow. I'm faster with the microscope.
Exactly.
So this is the thing that needs to be addressed first.
And we've been very fortunate as part of an EU program, that collaborative program that we put in place with Janssen and PDS, actually another company in the industry. We were fortunate enough to do some time and motion studies on our solution effectively, and we were able to demonstrate across a series of key workflow steps, the process steps within what the pathologist does every day. We're up to 43% faster, which is a phenomenal amount of time saving. But a lot of that time is coming from just the handling of materials, is the handling of slides, unboxing slides, trying to sort them into different groups, trying to sort them into different animals, repacking that material back into boxes, being able to slice and dice your cohorts efficiently between dose groups and time points and organs, target organs, for example. All of these factors, is actually where people lose a lot of time. You know what I mean? As I said, I think if you can be a little bit faster digitally than you can be down the microscope, you can be a lot faster though on all the logistics and administrative overheads that come with that content management then. So I think for us, as I said, it's the combination of both of those factors together, where you're looking at both a really, really fast ergonomic digital slide review system combined with really, really efficient workflow for handling the content in the way that pathologists are used to handling that content. I think the two of those things combined can bring those efficiencies. But that's a start for us. You know what I mean? Like, we always felt we wanted our digital workflow to be better than glass, if that makes sense holistically, you know, whereas, which is a challenge because, as you say, many of the studies and the contemporaneous studies that have been done have not demonstrated that efficiency, you know what I mean? But we reimagine every aspect of that, from the user machine interfaces to the way we develop the actual the way we manage content in the pipeline, in terms of trying to develop this almost analog user experience, right down to the display technologies, down to the computers that people are using to do the reviews on. All of these things, like if you think of radiology, for example, radiology, the radiologists have state-of-the-art displays, they have state-of-the-art machinery and equipment, whereas I think there seems to be the strange expectation in pathology that all this stuff is just going to work on your laptop, right? So we've been very, very focused in transforming the industry mindset around that, so that ultimately, when you do sit down in front of one of our solutions, the experience is analog. It's as good as looking at, you don't have that kind of motion judder when you move around the images that you normally get in any display. And we're really, really focused on every single minute little detail of that process to make sure that ultimately what the pathologist can get out of that is a better experience than they would even down a microscope.
I think, I'm repeating parts of your sentences, but one thing that's very important to me, what you said right now, is the way the pathologists are used to. I think managing change, pathology is kind of a conservative world, yes, I would say. And I think the clinical pathology at the moment a little less, because they have been exposed more to the digitalization. They have the FDA approved or cleared medical devices that they can use. They have now loosening of FDA and CLIA regulations in this COVID time to sign off remotely. It's not yet the case for preclinical pathology.
Yeah.
So I guess there is enough work to be done, but
yeah, and I think it's a very good point. You know what I mean? Ultimately, there has to be drivers. You know what I mean? As you say, you know, any, like the clinical community in general, or you know, as you say, pathology in general can be quite a conservative organization, and can be obviously driven by regulatory considerations predominantly, either in clinical or non-clinical. It doesn't really matter which industry you're in. You've just got different regulations to deal with, right? And but that being said, you know, I think that there are certain pain points within the workflow that are kind of so severe that ultimately I think it's a driver to get people over the line. For example, key one for us right now is enabling digital peer review of content. You know what I mean? Between CROs and pharma. In some cases, that comes with a slightly lower regulatory burden. So by virtue of that, I think it can be a good proving ground for technology, and can be a good proving ground to facilitate people not having to jump on planes, not having to be doing lots of manifests, taking slides in and out of boxes, making sure that content doesn't get broken in transit or cracked or destroyed. You know what I mean? So all of these factors, there's a real value proposition there. And I think once we start to demonstrate the true value of, you know, accelerated review digitally, you know, that ultimately will propagate to primary review also. And I think that in turn with that comes a validation strategy, you know, where we work with our collaborators and partners to get them to a place where they can GLP validate these solutions, and also to look at both GLP peer review initially, I think, and then obviously GLP primary review as a fast follow requirement. So I think our goal is to work with collaborators like Charles River to get that position in place by, you know, end of this year for peer review, and probably even Q1 for primary review if we can.
That would be great. I'm just going to make a side note for the listeners who are not familiar with that. GLP is good laboratory practice. This is the regulatory framework that the non-clinical pathology for drug development is operating within. And like Donald said, there are two parts to this digital, could be two parts of this review. You have a peer review, which is when one pathologist from one organization is reviewing the whole study that is supporting drug development, and another pathologist from another organization is reviewing this work. So this peer review as we said, is a little bit of a lower regulatory burden, and there's this primary review where the first pathologist is reviewing the whole study, and there is more regulatory work to be done. There is another aspect of preclinical pathology. This is veterinary diagnostic pathology, which is even less regulatory burden. That's why this part of the preclinical pathology went digital already in 2014. That was even before we had the Philips IntelliSight device approved by the FDA for clinical pathology.
Yeah, and that industry was in a process of going digital from to be honest, from probably 2011 on, I would say, you know what I mean, in terms of some of the early adoption that I've seen in that space, you know what I mean? So I think that you're right, it's certainly an industry that's less regulated and ultimately is more amenable to that technology. But that being said, you know, workflow and improved workflow and accelerated workflow, no matter when you introduce it in a cycle, even into an industry that's already digital, I think it's going to drive change and disruption anyway.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So yeah, regulatory burden is a burden that takes time to overcome, and we're dealing with that in preclinical pathology as well. Okay, regarding Deciphex products and or services, I don't know if you only offer product or also services. What are these?
Yeah, well, I suppose fundamentally we see ourselves as a services business, right? It's I suppose it's the modern paradigm that, you know, every company's focused primarily on a service. If there's software in the midst of that as a way to enable that service being provided, then I think so be it, you know. But and you know, I suppose as a result of, you know, having that kind of services ideology, you know, it's all about, you know, it's not just about kind of installing software or, you know, and kind of training people and moving away. It's about a continuous ongoing provision of high quality service to the customer. And I think this is a key facet of what modern software companies have to do. And, you know, they have to kind of rethink that, not the be all and end all, if that makes sense, you know. So like for us, as I said, you know, the kind of two key technologies we provide, obviously, as I said, one is basically a secure content management, distribution, and review platform called Patholytics Preclinical, which it's called preclinical for the non-clinical market, I suppose, realistically. There may well be a Patholytics Clinical in the future, perhaps, or another variant, but and I think we also have in turn then a second product offering, which is our Patholytics AI product offering, which is an adjunct effectively to Patholytics Preclinical, where you can integrate your AI-based analysis into your imaging pipeline and basically review data or review images with, you know, augmentation or with visual augmentation, AI-based visual augmentation as well as part of that workflow. And that can be used in multiple different ways. It can be used for, as I said, generalized abnormality detection, where you're able to kind of integrate information in a generalized way about whether a slide or an image may contain a piece of tissue that is abnormal from other pieces of tissue in the collection, you know, or draws people's attention to that. Or it can be very, very specific, where it can be trained or developed to let's say recognize specific lesions or specific targets within the tissue for quantitation. And I think all of those factors are very important, that you have both of those two use cases are quite relevant. There's lots of people who have very specific endpoints they want to resolve and quantify and order their content by. Whereas in other scenarios, you might just want to say, well, is there something wrong with that slide? If that makes sense, is there something I need to go look at that slide for? You know what I mean? I think both are very fundamental. I think there's probably a better acceptance in the marketplace today of those specific endpoints, as in if we can go and solve a particular problem or quantify a particular problem, that's really useful. However, as I said, our long-term vision and strategy, where we invest a lot of our horsepower, is in that whole aspect of generalized abnormality detection and saying, okay, well, we want to solve a problem, you know, even maybe an unforeseen problem, which is kind of interesting. How do you solve a problem you haven't seen yet? And, you know, obviously many lesions present themselves in novel and interesting ways. And, you know, there's a whole diversity of tissues in these non-clinical studies. So trying to cover all of the bases based on supervised approach is almost nigh impossible, because trying to source materials, trying to source the examples of the lesion, trying to get enough of them to be relevant, you know what I mean, so that your models can develop a context on the tissues. Is almost impossible. So we've very much focused on this concept of unsupervised or semi-supervised technologies that facilitate, as I said, the solution of unforeseen problems, where you go, there's a lesion there, we don't know what it is, but it's definitely a lesion. It's definitely not normal, right? So that philosophy is something we're very, very focused on, and something we're investing a lot of our research dollars in right now.
Mm-hmm. I think, like you said, the specific solutions is something the market and the industry is already used to. It comes also from the classical image analysis, yes, where you would have a particular algorithm approved or cleared for detecting something, like, I don't know, HER2 staining, other IHC stainings. In the clinical world. The other approach, the unsupervised, semi-supervised general abnormality detection, it is more specific to the non-clinical pathology workflow, where yes, most of yes, the slides that we look at, I'm a toxicopathologist myself, are normal. And you are not, you don't know what you're going to see as a lesion. There is a certain variety of lesions. There are certain lesions particular to a particular compound you're evaluating, but there can always be a surprise. And I think pointing out to the slides you would have to review, even though you don't have the answer already what it's going to be, is already a huge efficiency improvement for our workflow.
Exactly, and that's the strategy, and that's why we're focused on it, I think. And I suppose even in the context of specific endpoints and targets, being able to do that in a scalable way on whole slide image data, and trying to be able to do it in a timely fashion that's relevant for review processes, in some cases can be a challenge also, you know what I mean? And again, I suppose we've always thought of our infrastructure in the context of doing analysis in pipeline. So as content is integrated into our platform, it's being analyzed, and it's being, we provide a view on the whole slide, if that makes sense, in terms of presence of lesions, presence of specific lesion types, and one can consume that really easily through our UI as well. And obviously kind of use the data derived from those analysis as part of your workflow. And I think these things are all kind of key factors. It's about the ergonomy of use as well of AI, as much as it is about the integration of AI. You know what I mean? How do we consume AI? Is it something we have to invoke, or is it something that's been done for us? How do I consume it? Do I have to select regions? No, I want to be able to look at the whole image. You know what I mean? I want to look at multi-organ slides, for example, where I can't, where I have different organs in one block, which is a kind of a unique curiosity of the non-clinical world.
Exactly. We
so
work with
mice, handle all of these
with rats,
vagaries of that process. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Fit on a slide.
Variability. Yeah, absolutely. These are all factors that come into play, and frankly speaking, you know what I mean, need to be considered as part of how you integrate AI into the pipeline. You know what I mean? So I think that's really where we specialize. And obviously the other side of it is we try and advocate very open frameworks for AI. We know that there's much research going on around model design, model frameworks and implementations that are being published in literature today. We're very much a view that people can integrate those models, and kind of use those models themselves within our framework, and deploy them as they see fit. You know what I mean? Where a better model comes along, it gives a better fit to your training data. Ultimately, we have no major concerns or problems about other people adapting, models from literature and other sources to integrate them into the framework for use. You know what I mean? The key thing for us is providing a really, really clever framework for model training, model deployment, inference, all of those factors, and being able to provide that kind of in a scalable way so that people can get their data quickly and efficiently. And I think this is critical, and take away all the kind of the dark arts, I suppose, from trying to use AI in digital pathology. Put it in the hands of the pathologists, put it in the hands of the users to some extent.
Yes, especially in Europe, that's currently a requirement for AI applications for crucial decisions like medical and scientific decision to be transparent. And that's a part of the GDPR regulations. I don't know when it's going to be effective in Europe, maybe you know, but it's definitely coming. It's not going to be a black box anymore. It will have to be so-called glass box, and it will have to be explainable.
And we're very focused on that. It's one thing to train a model. It's another thing to kind of identify what are those kind of features that are being used within that model to drive an outcome, right? In terms of help the scientists understand, well, what is it appreciating? What is it learning? What is it focusing on? You know, there are techniques to facilitate kind of information extraction from some of these models now that facilitate a little bit more understanding, I think, of the approach the model is taking to solving the problem. And I think this is always insightful and builds confidence with the users as well, in terms of helping them understand how it's, I'm not saying how it's working, but to an extent, the sort of features it's prioritizing in terms of you know, its learning process, you know. And it's, I suppose, similarly in prognostic and predictive models, you know, where we can start to sort of back propagate and understand, I suppose, what are those input features that are prognostically significant, you know, based on learning against prognostic data. All of these things are really, really exciting developments to give people a little bit more insight into what the model is actually doing, right? In terms of rather than just putting in some data at the front end and getting out an answer at the back, as you say, which is very much a black box approach, you know.
I think it's going to be even more crucial for the unsupervised approaches where you don't have labels, where you don't have input from an expert, and you have to figure out, does it make sense? Because it may stratify perfectly well on your data set, but the stratification is going to be based on some features that are irrelevant biologically and pathologically. So
correct.
important.
And the key thing in any screening algorithm is sensitivity, right? It's like, it's, you know, you need extremely high sensitivity. I think people can even bear a little lack of specificity on the basis of being able to ensure that they identify the lesions and the positive features. But certainly, you know, validating those type of models requires really, really scalable data sets. And, you know, obviously we've taken steps recently to establish collaborations in the industry that facilitate us gaining access to those kind of high volume data sets that can help us truly validate and bring a degree of confidence to the industry that ultimately they need to kind of almost step back and let the machine do a little more, you know. So I think that confidence has to come through data and through studies and through publication and so on and so forth. So we're continuously working on that philosophy and approach, you know.
So AI and especially the unsupervised way of training algorithms is already very innovative. At the moment, that's the hot topic. But in general, how do you approach innovation at Deciphex? I mean, in a year, there's going to be something new. How do you look for it? How do you, you know, monitor the industry, the needs to know, okay, we have to implement something new? What is innovation for Deciphex?
Yeah, I think as a process, innovation is quite a challenge, and I've worked in organizations of various scale, and, you know, I think large scale corporates are always trying to instill an innovative culture and trying to almost put in place processes for innovation in some ways, which is almost the antithesis of innovation in some ways. You know what I mean? Let's create a process to drive more innovation. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of the DNA of a large corporate. So I suppose the kind of key kind of things that, you know, I think are underpinning innovation always are twofold. One is having the right talent in an organization, and having a diversity of people, you know what I mean, a multidisciplinary team who can bring kind of insights from different perspectives to the problem. And that's always really, really important. But I think the most important thing is giving people time and space to explore and to devise and develop new techniques, for example. You know what I mean? I think that's critical. So we tend to be quite, you know, I think there's some strong themes within our work, if that makes sense, kind of, how would you say, high level themes and visions. And I think in many ways, some of the data scientists that we have, life scientists that we have, kind of, I suppose, try and kind of innovate within those themes, you know what I mean? But largely speaking, not saying without huge constraint. I think kind of conceptually ideas need to be run up the flagpole a little bit to ensure that they're viable, or at least that there's some degree of potential in a concept or an idea. But beyond that, as I said, we try and give people as much free rein as possible. And then once we feel things start to mature, we tend to start to roll things into production releases, harden them, you know, and validate them efficiently, you know what I mean? But we can tend to do that because we may have, you know, 20 things out there, and we might roll 10 in at any point in time, if that makes sense, you know what I mean? So that in ways we allow people to explore and to innovate without being really tied into a rigid development process. And then when they're at an advanced prototype stage, they've got something that's really nice, really worth bringing forward. That's the point where we start to integrate releases. So we tend to be quite agile. We use agile frameworks in our development. We use agile frameworks, I suppose, really in terms of our entire thinking and processes that we do day to day. So, and we're quite dynamic in terms of both reacting to market conditions, but also reacting to the internal environment in terms of what's maturing quicker. How do we evolve our product strategy to bring new and exciting technologies to the customer? You know, and I think that's kind of key. But as an innovation process, I think the key things are good talent, collaboration, and a free rein to explore new ideas and thoughts. You know.
I'm always amazed how this multidisciplinary collaboration contributes to new ideas, to new directions, especially
Absolutely.
when it's a collaboration of pathologists and computer scientists. It's interesting interface, I would say.
No,
These
it
groups are
is.
very different, different personalities when you go into one area or the other, and yet in digital pathology they have to work together all the time. Otherwise, there is no digital pathology. There is either digital or pathology.
I would also contend that, you know, in prior experiences I've often felt we haven't had enough input from the pathologists, if that makes sense, or decisions have been made without pathologist input, you know what I mean? And I think sometimes that's in its own right, you know, how we end up with, let's say, maybe less efficient workflows than we could, if that makes sense. We haven't thought through, you know, and, you know, it's one thing to interview and do voice of customer analysis with your user stakeholders, but to really deeply embed them in your development process, that's a different thing again, you know what I mean? And brings further insights than you know, in our early developments working with pathologists in Janssen and AstraZeneca, you know what I mean? We were literally pushing daily bills, you know what I mean? They were playing with the technology in alpha stage, beta stage, you know, literally looking at wireframes with us, looking at interactivity of different approaches, you know what I mean? So so when you take that approach and you really invest in, you know, bringing those end users to the table during the process, I think you end up with a much better output, you know what I mean? And
definitely,
I think it's a critical part of the journey, you know.
I'm a big advocate of that.
People who are not in the industry can conceive many ideas all day long as to how we might solve a problem or how we should do something in a UI context, you know what I mean? But ultimately it's the user's opinion that really matters, you know what I mean, in terms of their perspective on it, you know.
So do you currently have pathologists on staff at Deciphex?
So we have, as I said, we've been fortunate to kind of have those early stage collaborations that we've put in place, or in the non-clinical world at least. And I think we're actually in the process of hiring a clinical pathologist as we speak, so to work on some of our clinical programs. So yeah, so we really do believe in the need and necessity to have pathologists close to us as in our daily work, you know.
And how big is your team?
So at the moment we're at 35, which has been quite a big scale up for us from 2 guys in start of 2018, or 3 guys at start of 2018. So it's progressing well. You know, we're continuing to hire during COVID pandemic, which is good. You know, it just shows, I suppose, the appetite in the marketplace for remote work solutions and for for trying to, I suppose, I suppose one of the interesting things about scenarios like this is it does bring these dynamics where, change can happen quickly and change can happen dramatically. In many industries, we've seen, revolutions in the clinical world, to support treatment of COVID patients, for example, and provision of PPE and so on and so forth. So it's often interesting to be kind of in the mix when these type of discussions, when these type of events occur, because they can drive positive change, I suppose a negative change for some organizations. But thankfully, we've been in a very favorable position on the basis of digital workflows, work from home. These are kind of key themes that we've been trying to press in the marketplace. And, as I said, I think as part of that, we've been able to continue to recruit, continue to invest, and continue to accelerate during the whole process.
Thank you for that, and congratulations on that as well. I know you've been in the digital pathology area forever, almost, but with this particular endeavor, with Deciphex, did you have any failures that set you up for success, or things that you were not expecting or wish you would have known before starting this particular company?
Well, I think I would go back to my first startup and say there was many things, that happened of that nature, But I suppose in ways, life experience is useful in that respect. You learn a lot of things along the way. You learn a lot of pitfalls that beset a company in various stages. And, to be honest, we have been very fortunate in the sense that things have gone reasonably smoothly for us. As a startup, we haven't had to have too many, pivots as would be conventional in startups. We've been pretty much on rails in terms of, our strategic plan and how we want to approach the industry and so on. I think it took us a little time to get the team right and the balance of skills, but thankfully, touch wood, so far, we've been able to kind of stay the course and kind of retain kind of reasonably consistent view on our long-term strategy in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So far so good. And I think a lot of that is just simply down to, as I said already, life experience and making those mistakes maybe at earlier points in your career,
I guess the company is a startup, but the experience you bring in,
that's the thing, as I said, it feels very different from, as I said, I'm not saying a bunch of 21-year-olds in a room, but you know what I mean. I think the energy is different, and it's calmer. It's more pragmatic. It's more everybody knows the playbook, and we can play accordingly.
Anything else that you would like to tell the listeners? Anything, I don't know, new achievements, whatever you want to share with them that I didn't ask you about?
No, I think as I said, I think from our perspective, I think the real achievement is being here, being very well engaged with the pharma market and the pharma community, from not having a brand in 2017 to a brand that's broadly known now within the non-clinical community. I think that's been a major achievement for us over the years. And I think for us, we're just really excited to get the acknowledgement from the industry that around what we're doing as a company, that our thoughts and our energies and our focus on customer service, they're resonating well with the marketplace. And we're extremely positive and happy to have that level of acknowledgement, as we know. Non-clinical pathology is a highly networked market, a highly networked environment. It's just a very limited number of conferences. Everybody tends to go to them. Everybody knows everybody to some extent. So I think it's critical for us as a company that we also provide really good quality service to everybody, because, as I said, word travels quickly in this industry, both good and bad. You know what I mean? So it's important to make sure that we do stay, maintain the highest levels of service and quality in terms of what we're doing day to day.
I think the preclinical pathology world is also relieved, or happy and relieved, by having a solution that is tailored to their needs. so far it has been always something from clinical pathology that had to be adapted, and there were many users annoyed by that because this is not our workflow. And I mean, you would have the advocate that would the advocates that would suck it up and say digital is fantastic, but you would have also people who didn't like it because that was not how we work. So
no, absolutely, and I think it was kind of a curious situation, a curious industry. It's a bit like chicken and egg in a way, you know what I mean? Whereby, you know, the industry, largely speaking, wasn't digitized. But I think, in my view, fundamentally, the reason the industry wasn't digitized is because the solutions and infrastructures and scanning throughput and all of these factors, and maybe storage requirements and regulatory position, all these factors hadn't fallen into line, right? So in ways, I suppose, where you have external industry players looking at this market and saying, okay, well, it hasn't adopted, right? Okay, so why do we want to invest in this market? But of course, the kind of the opposite view is to say, well, if one invests in the market, then the market will adopt, because you will be able to provide solutions that are of the right scale, the right performance, the right quality, effectively, to facilitate their use of the technology. So it's a bit chicken and egg. I think sometimes a corporate position on this can be very much driven from the perspective of, you know, is the market adopting? Therefore, I'll go with the trend. You know, I'll go with the wave. I don't want to be the first guy in here. Whereas as a startup, I think you can take some risks like that. You can play a calculated gamble, so to speak, on the basis that, you know, yes, this market will adopt if it has the right technology and solutions. And I think we're also fortunate to see that shift in the industry psychologically. I think it's coming. And also, I think the storage side of things, the scanning, the quality of the new scanning technologies emerging from the various kind of market leaders in the industry, I think they're all up to standard now in terms of high throughput, high automation levels that we need, with very low rescan rates. All of these things are really, really important, you know, and it's not just us, it's not just our position there. I think we play an important role, but ultimately there's all of these peripheral kind of components as well that are critical to the overall solution and its adoption as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for your time, for this painting the picture of Deciphex. Before we say goodbye, tell the listeners where can they find you online to learn more about your company.
Yeah, so our online presence is deciphex.com. We also have a product microsite called patholytics.com, and you're able to see us there. We're obviously on Twitter, LinkedIn as well, you know what I mean, as sources if you want to follow us or connect with us through those means.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna put the links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Donald.
Thank you very much. It's really real pleasure to have a conversation with you today.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. For more great digital pathology resources, visit the Digital Pathology Consulting website and subscribe to our newsletter on digitalpathologyconsulting.com. After subscribing, you will get access to the free annotation guidelines, which will help you annotate slides consistently in all your digital pathology projects. Talk to you in the next episode.